Good morning, all. So the presentation was sold as warning why Google may drop your website in May 2021. So who is this presentation for? Well, I often come across people who say their website is just a referral site. If somebody gets their business card, they want to go to the website and just check it's a real company. If that's you, this probably isn't going to affect you. If your website has information you want people to read, or services you want to sell, or products you want people to buy, then this most definitely is for you. Although I would give a caveat that if you're in the first group where you think your website is for referral, just now and again, do a search for your company name. So I had a very renowned financial advisor I was speaking to the back end of last year, whose website was just for referral. Actually, when you Googled his name, his website wasn't on the first page, but a story about how he got caught up in a financial scandal 20 years ago was. So, yeah, just double check. So, what are we going to go through today? How we got here, a very, very brief history of Google updates. We always try and sell our services as jargon free. This is 99% jargon free. Then we'll go on to the changes that are coming in May, and I'll give you some examples and give you some actions to take away and do. So, who am I? Martin Lenthal. This is for Adrian. So I've been getting websites to the top of Google since 2012. So next month will be 9 years. Considered by many, but not myself, as a Google expert in the UK. And we work on and consult with local businesses, national companies, and international organizations on how to get more from their online presence. Not necessarily websites, but social media as well. So, two things you need on every website: Google Analytics and Google Search Console. I can only see about half the people. Those who are in control of their website, hands up who has Google Analytics on their website.
Don't know.
Don't know, yeah. If you don't know, you haven't. Very often a web builder, I've never known a web builder put it on. Normally it's us that put it on. Some savvy companies will do it. Or if you had it on an old website, they may have transferred it to a new one. So Google Analytics is really simple to set up. And I know it's easy for me to say. There's a million videos on YouTube on how to do it. In essence, you log in to Google Analytics using an email address. You tell it your website. It gives you a tiny one-line piece of code you then put in the back end of your website. And from there on, you'll get live data about who's on your website and historical data. So from today backwards, if you like. So the historical stuff is yesterday backwards, and you've got live stuff. The number of visitors, what pages they've looked at, how long they spent on the site, how they flowed through the site, not who they are, what type of person they are, where are they situated, what device did they use, what's their age, what are their interests, what other website types do they go to. So for us, as a problem-solving digital marketing agency, we can see how people are interacting with your website, work on the great stuff, and improve the stuff that needs to be improved upon. The biggest thing is, and most people with analytics still don't set this up, is how many people are actually converting to a lead. Because if you don't know that, then in terms of sales and generating more revenue, you're dead in the water. The second tool, which once you've added analytics, you go to Google Search Console, again, log in with an email address, give it your email address, tell it you've already got analytics, and it's set for you. That's it, done. So it's 4 or 5 button presses. And what Google Search Console does, it gives you data on the security and the health of your website. Things like how many pages are indexed. And index means how many pages will Google show in the search results. A lot of people don't know, even though Google knows your website, say, got 50 pages, it chooses to only ever show 25, or about half of them. So what you need to do is go in there and it'll tell you which ones it's got and which ones it hasn't got, and you get it to look at the others. So imagine if half the information of your website is not visible on Google. That's called indexing. If there are any Google penalties against you, that'll be in there. Any usability or user experience issues. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. So it's how Google sees your website, or the good things Google sees on your website or not in some cases. Oh, why did that not change? So how did we get here? A brief history of Google updates, one slide. So we're going to be talking about core vitals, or Google calls it core vitals, but the industry is calling it page experience. So back in 2014, what's called an SSL certificate became what's called a very small ranking factor. So Google always says these things are going to be a small ranking factor. Now, an SSL is something you buy through your host, which puts a little padlock up next to your domain name, and it means that your website is encrypted. So for donkey's years, people taking payments online have had to have one, and then Google suggested everyone have one for security of websites. That small ranking factor now in 2014 is now, if you go to a website that hasn't got one, you'll get a big error message from Google saying, this site is insecure. Go back to safety or advance with danger, not recommended. So it's interesting how these little ranking factors soon become absolutely imperative. In 2015, Google started talking about ranking websites if they were mobile friendly. Now, a lot of businesses misunderstood that if I go onto a smartphone or any phone, I suppose, with a screen, and search my website, look, I can read my website. That is not mobile friendly. Mobile friendly was the text is readable without scrolling or pinching. As I scrolled through the site, it became responsive and changed sites. The images shrunk to fit the screen. So it was actually not mobile friendly, but responsive. And again, it was a small ranking factor. Then 2.5, 3 years ago, the time your website loaded is now become a ranking factor. So I press the button to go onto your website. How many seconds does it take to fully load your website? And at that time, Google was saying it should be 3 seconds or less, where most websites are running at 10, 15, 20 seconds, because most websites use WordPress. And I actually brought this up with Google. I was in a meeting with them back in 2018 and said 60% of the world's websites are built on WordPress. You're saying you're going to start ranking people less if they're over 3 seconds. What are you going to do about it? And Google's answer was very clear. That's not our problem. That's WordPress's problem. And I thought at the time, you miserable gits, but actually it's made WordPress change their system now. So you can now build in WordPress and get a website under 3 seconds. Then in 2019, mobile first was introduced, which means if most of the people going to your website do so via a mobile, Google will show, so I should explain first, Google has 2 versions of their search results, one purely for desktop, one purely for mobile. So if someone's searching on a mobile and I'm searching on a desktop, we will see different results. And then Google said, if most people go to your website via a phone or a mobile device, we're always going to show them the mobile version of your website, which is great. But if people in 2015 didn't build their website as responsive, they're now going to drop out of those rankings. So you almost need 2 versions of your website these days, a desktop version and a mobile version. And now how Google ranks things, it was always relevance first. So the copy on your page, how local are you? It would forgive you if your website was a bit slow. Let's say business support services in Dursley. I'm looking for business support services. Michelle offers them. Her website mentions it, but it's terribly slow. And I haven't checked Michelle, so I'm not criticizing. It would say, well, still relevant, so we'll put her there. Now we're coming to core vitals in May, becoming a small ranking factor. Note the terminology. It's believed, and there's an asterisk next to it, they're now going to say it's the user experience first against relevance or the copy or the website second. So Michelle support services in Dursley, her website's really slow, the user experience on the site is not good. So actually we're going to show somebody else's website where we used to show hers. And then your website will drop down the rankings and possibly off the rankings. So that's how we came to be where we are. Any questions at that point while I sip coffee?
Yes, Martin. What is the definition of user experience?
Graham, it's almost like you were put in the audience to ask the question. I'll give, I've gone backwards now. I'll give you some examples and it will answer that question. So this looks really technical, but it isn't. This is a tool called GT Metrics. One of those URLs I'll put in the end. It's free to use and it measures, it used to measure how long it took your website to load, and now it measures the page experience. So many of you remember we used to have, we still have the website. We used to brand Digital NRG and our other companies, and this was one of our websites, BAMPsh. And it started dropping the rankings, and we weren't that bothered because it's not our main website, and where we wanted it to rank, it ranked. However, we thought we'd use it as the test website for implementing changes we're going to do for clients. So Google measures it in certain ways. In fact, I'm sure I've skipped a slide there. Let me just go back, make sure I've slipped there we go. I skipped a slide. So I'll go on to show you exactly. And this is the 1% technical stuff that I mentioned. So in terms of what is a good experience, there's a number of things, but these are the main ones. So something called the largest contextual paint. How long does it take for the largest element of your page to load? So normally that's a hero image at the top or a banner image across the top, or some people even put videos in there. So how long does it take for that to load and to become visible to your visitor? And you should aim for less than 1.2 seconds. Then how quickly can people interact with your site? How long does the site take to load that I can start scrolling, reading, pushing buttons? And something quite technical, but if you've ever experienced it, you'll understand, something called I'm just going to say the word layout shift rather than cumulative. Have you ever gone onto a website and gone to click on something, and then at the last second it moves and you end up clicking on something else? And I wanted to think of an example because it actually happened to me on my mobile phone a couple of days ago, and I ended up in Facebook when I was trying to be somewhere else. So Google now measures that as well. So you can see what it's trying to get over. I go to a website, it takes ages to load. I can't interact with it for a couple of seconds. And as I go to click on a button, it moves and I click on something else, or I've got to try and click on the button again. That's not a great user page experience. So what used to be measured, how long it takes to fully load, is not so important. It is these little changes. So as I was explaining, this was our old website. Now, if you look at the blue colored bars below, so the largest contextual paint, so that header coming in is 1.8 seconds. The time to be interactive is almost 5 seconds. So in website terms, that's a really long time. Most people will have given up after 3 and clicked back and gone somewhere else. That was the old working. And then it took 13 seconds to fully load the page. At that point, or now, that is the bit that's measured. But going forward from May, it's those first 2 or 3 items, how long the largest paint takes to do, and how quickly I can be interactive, that becomes the experience for the user. So we took BAMPsh, we looked at it, we've put lots of different plugins on it, changed the layout, and we still couldn't really improve it. So we've had to rebuild the website in what we would call a good page experience way. We've managed to get it to this. So the fully loaded time is still 6 seconds, but we're not worried about that now. Now I can interact with that website just over 1 second, 1.1 second. And you can see the score for the geometrics grade is gone from an E to an A. And that's just rebuilding the site thinking all the time now about how the page loads, how quickly, which sections are going to load, how quickly before it comes interactive. So this is the old version versus the new. So good is in the first column, what Google suggests is a good experience, old and new. So even the largest page before was 1.8 seconds. Actually, to load the full header was nearer 4 seconds. It now loads just over a second. And it's that time to be interactive from almost 5 seconds down to 1. So this website is technically almost 5 times quicker to load or to be interactive to the user. And something we weren't aware of until we did this is the button shift. So every time somebody goes to press on a button, about half a second, 0.35, it would take to stop that button shifting, which is actually quite a lot. So probably on our website, users would get a terrible experience where it wasn't loading fast. As they go to press a button, it moved somewhere else, so they have to try and move it again. And now we've got that down to the lowest. The lowest I think they record it is 0.01, which in other words, it loads automatically. So I asked the question there, which version do you think you'd want to use? And although, excuse me, you might think, well, you're only saving 3 or 4 seconds here. Next time a website loads, just make a mental note of how quickly that loads and how you're sat there waiting, especially with 5G coming around the corner, because our sites will now be instant. They'll be almost live. People aren't going to wait 2 seconds to view a website anymore. It will come down to less than that. So which would you prefer to use? Which do you think Google will rank better? And which do you think will get the most conversions of people visiting the site, even though the content is exactly the same? So we did this, I rebuilt it over last weekend and launched it about Wednesday. We've already seen it jump back in the rankings, not back to where we'd like it to be or where it was years ago, but just making those changes in page speed has really sped up the rankings and it's jumping up. Any questions at that point? Is that too technical?
I got a question, Martin. If, say, where you say time for interactive, so there's a lot of these trendy one-page websites nowadays. So in which case, all people do is just scroll down to the bottom of them. Does that mean that they're not being interactive and they're going to suffer because of it?
No, it's can they scroll? At what point does that top half or above the fold of the website load and the section below it that they can actually scroll? One-page websites are fine if you're driving advertising to it, you're not looking to rank.
Yeah, because the one-page websites are going to have a rubbish bounce rate, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And although I can always argue a positive on bounce rate or a negative, depending on I'm trying to keep the customer or get a new customer, bounce rate is important, but it's not necessarily a ranking factor. So we have a customer with a bounce rate of over 99%, but they're a taxi company. So people hit their website, get the phone number, come off the website. But because we've set up conversion tracking on the phone number, Google sees it as a positive, the bounce rate. Whereas any other type of website, that would be horrendous. In fact, probably you're not getting genuine visitors, you're getting bots.
I've got another question, if that's okay, Martin. On YouTube, they judge, well, as I'm given to understand, they one of the metrics that they use to judge videos is how long somebody watches that video compared to how long the video is. Are they going to be working towards more of a thing like that, where they're going to be looking at how long people stay on websites as well?
Oh, they very much are already. If you load in analytics, you've got something called time on site.
Right.
So there's a number of things. When a visitor comes, how many pages do they view? How many times do they come back? It's called sessions. How long they spend on site. So the longer they spend on your site, although Google says it never uses analytics for rankings, it uses relevancy, and now it will use speed and page experience and relevancy. It is a good factor. And if you can get your time on site up, you will be better in the rankings. So a good way to do that is to put a video on a page so that people have to stay and watch the video, or choose to stay and watch the video.
So-
Another trick you'll see is these newspaper type spammy things will have top 50 films on Netflix, and they've got 5 on a page, and you have to press next to get to the next 5. They're trying to up their page visit views.
So if you've done YouTube videos and you want to set, and you've embedded them into your website, it's better, and you want to send these videos for clients to see, it's better to send them the website page with the video on than the YouTube page.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
They're on your site then, aren't they?
Yeah, true.
And make sure under the video you've got find out more or apply now, or just some sort of call to action that either gets the lead or gets them to another page.
Brilliant, thank you.
Does everyone understand that so far? So how long the largest picture on the page takes to load, how long before I can start scrolling or pressing things or reading things, and sort of these shifting buttons or links. Everyone with me so far?
Yeah.
Before I give you the bad news. Unfortunately, that's not the whole story. And this is why you need to load in, because you can use GT Metrics. It's free, and it will tell you all those indicators, but it doesn't tell you why. And we've only touched on 3 or 4 of them, which is why today I'm not going to go into Google Console and show you examples, because you don't know what the problem with your actual individual website is until you go into Google Console, Search Console, and see. So here's an example. Here's a fantastic company we work with. They're manufacturers and supply internationally environmentally friendly solutions, removing Artex, varnish, graffiti, all these types of products that are very effective and wonderful. That's my plug for them. So you see their current website, fantastic. First contextual paint is actually under half a second. If you see the 2 white panes, but actually if you look, it's the 2-second one that loads. Time to be interactive is 1.9 seconds, and it's fully loaded in 2 seconds. So looking at GT Metrics, that is perfect, almost perfect. And it should be. We've worked really, really hard to get this website down from 25-second load time when we first had it. And we've got it where it is now, and now Google have changed the rules as they do. However, when we go into their Search Console and look at Core Vitals, and this is the type of thing you've now got to start looking for, although the main pages on the website load fantastically well, 66 pages need improvement. And actually last month, those 66 pages were poor. And it's because Google is saying if you're on a mobile and you go to any of these pages, it takes over 2.5 seconds to load. It was at 4 seconds last month. We've worked to get it down. So come May, this website ranks #1 for all its products, not necessarily products, but if you do, I don't know, Artex removal solution or removing Artex frequently asked questions, this page ranks 1. In fact, it ranks in position 0 for most of the time, which is where it's above the rankings with an answer. The last 2 years we've been working with them are their best 2 years in business. Come May, that website is going to drop off the rankings. Their rankings, their traffic, their best year of business is going to completely disappear. Even though in GT Metrics, it said they've got a fantastic score. So go into console. It takes a few weeks for the Search Console to build up the data on your website, which is why I'm suggesting do it now. And then you'll get this. So although we've got it down from 4 seconds to 2.5 seconds on the blog page, it's still not good enough. We're now rebuilding this site for the client to be like that BAMPS example where everything just loads. And what it is all their blog posts take over 2.5 seconds to load. So we're having to change the website.
Is that because they're
Or
images and things like that?
no, it's the template of the blog posts.
So I was just looking at ours because we're on Squarespace, and most of what's slowing ours down is the Squarespace content. It's all the JavaScript and stuff.
Ben will note we've worked on a client together. Squarespace is great for building very visual websites. It's not great for SEO, and it's not great for load time. there are better out there. Excuse me. But so at the bottom, it told us what was wrong when we go into core vitals. But I've also seen where text is too small to read on your website. They suggest it's got to be over a size 14 font. Elements are too close together, which could be images too close to text, or text too close to text, or buttons too close to anything. Content wider than the screen, and it goes on and goes on. So that's why today I haven't gone into Search Console to show you, because you just need to load yours in and see what it says about yours. Start at GT Metrics, and if anyone's really technophobe, I can help you with this. I can load you into GT Metrics and send you the score. But as you can see from this example, that's only half the story. That looks great, but you go into the actual Search Console, that's all the traffic to their website is through the blog posts. So they literally, their business would have been finished overnight. Not finished, back to where it was before they started working with us. So I have a few actions for you. I'll send the presentation out and I'll put some links in for you. So actions, please snag the screen, make a note, add, if it isn't there already, Google Analytics to your website. It's really easy. There's a million videos out there, as I've said, showing you how to do it. Once you've done that, it's even simpler to add Search Console, because you just validate that you've already got analytics. You need something called a cache. You need caching on your website. Now, caching is where most people don't realize that when people visit your website, they're not visiting your website. They're visiting the version of your website that Google has stored, which is why very often you can make changes to your website. When you go back and look at it, they're there, but you ring somebody else and they can't see it because it's cached. It's like a library of your website sat on their computer or a local server, which actually speeds it up. So what you can do is add, if you're on WordPress, you can add a caching plugin called W3 Total Cache, and it speeds up that process. So it will minimize the size of all your pages so that when people go to it, they're going to a faster minimized version of your page, not the live page. The next one is something called image compression. So this is where technical becomes not great in the real world. I'll say to a client, your images are too big. And they're saying, well, they're only 4 centimeters by 6 centimeters. No, we mean the size of the file. So if you take a photograph on an iPhone, that's probably a 4 meg picture. That will take about a day and a half to load on a website. It wouldn't. It'll take about 30 seconds. It'll feel like a day and a half. So you need to compress it first. And there's a website called TinyPNG. When you just drag your image in, it takes you 3 meg picture, puts it down to a tiny file size, no loss of quality, and you load that onto your website so that it's a very small file size. Or if you've got WordPress, there's a brilliant plugin called Short Pixel, which does that for you automatically when you put your images on. Test your website speed on GT Metrics and analyze the core vital data when it comes up in a few weeks' time. Please act upon it, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble in a few months' time. So is your website going to disappear May the 1st or May the 20th, whenever it happens? No. Will it drop in the rankings? Possibly. If all people around you in your industry start to do this, you will drop in the rankings. But think of it the other way. Let's put the positive on it. If you get your house in order now, you can only start to outrank the competitors better and more for more terms in more areas until they catch on. So if you look at this, don't turn a blind eye to it, as so often we do. If it's a terrible user experience, according to these metrics, get your website rebuilt. It might be painful now, but it will be a hell of a lot more painful in a few years' time, or even a year's time, or 6 months' time, when you're not ranking, you're not getting clients, revenues are low, and now you've got to rebuild the website. So do it while times are better or just not terrible. Thank you.